Okay. I had a piece of paper. I'm gonna use this. Did you print this out? Yeah. Then something. You remember that? I do. Inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم حكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. In continuation of Kitab al-Salat from the book Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni with Imam Al-Hajjawi rahimahullah ta'ala. We started the beginning of the book, right? Today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to cover the chapter Bab al-Adhan wal-Iqama. Before we get started, quick questions. What's the ruling on calling the Adhan and the Iqama? Does anyone know? What do you know about the Adhan and the Iqama or Iqama? What do you know? What is it? What is the Adhan and what is the Iqama? What is it? Why is everybody looking away? The call to prayer. Good. Do we have to do this? Is this obligatory? It's wajib. What does wajib mean? What does that mean? So, obligatory meaning you have to do it. So what if you don't do it? So you're saying, so every human being, when they pray, you have to call the Adhan and the Iqama. And if you don't do it, you deserve to be punished? No what? So which is it? Is it obligatory or is it not obligatory? Sunnah mu'akkada. Sunnah mu'akkada. Before you start looking through the book, then you was cheating. No, actually it's fard kifaya. What does that mean? It's a communal what? How do they translate fard kifaya? Excellent. A fard kifaya is a communal obligation. What does that mean? In Arabic, they say إِذَا قَامَ بِهِ بَعْدْ سَقَطَ عَنَ الْبَاقِينَ. This means that if some people were to establish it, then it is removed. The obligation of it is removed from others. Just like the Salatul Janazah is a fard kifaya. Like, we have something called a fard kifaya, which means it's a communal obligation. Then we have something called fardu ain, which means it is something that is obligatory upon every individual, like the salat, right? If we know Muslims are praying, there's a salat removed from other people? No. The next issue. When we speak about the salat, how important is the salat? How important is the salat? The second pillar. So what's the first pillar? Shahadatain. What is the Shahadatain? Testimony of faith. You're not the only one here, Sheikh. I'm just saying, there's other people here. Yeah. What's the Shahadatain?
The two testimonies.
So what is it?
To bear witness.
To bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except for Allah, and that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is his slave and his messenger. So, understanding that testimony necessitates things that come after that, correct? Correct? All right. We're not getting into the shurut or the conditions of La ilaha illallah, but understanding that when we make the testimony that we believe in Allah and worship Allah alone and not associate partners with him, and when we establish that his prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his slave and his messenger, then what's the next thing we were commanded to do? To pray, right? Prayer is so important that if a Muslim was in the worst possible situation, the salat is not removed from them. Think of a bad situation a person could be in. On your deathbed. On your deathbed, do you get a pass for not praying? Nah. Now, obviously, if you're not cognizant, etc., that's, you're out. You're out of. But in general, a person could be in the worst possible state, yet the salah is not removed from them. Allah doesn't give you a pass. Even if you're in war, if you're in a war and people shooting at you and you're in a war and the time for the salat is in, there's a certain salat prescribed for that situation. There is no possible option if a person, if everything is going right with them, that a person can leave off the prayer. So much so, we have things that we love, right? Like people love to go to work. Why do they love to go to work? Make money, right? Yet your salat is more important than you making money. What does that mean? It's more important. Yes, it's more important than you make it. That means if you can't make money, but you have to pray, then you need to pray. You need to pray. On your jobs, you need to let the people know where you work. Yes, I am a Muslim and I need to pray. Period. That's not something you wrestle with. It is what it is. And most employers respect that. But this is our obligation being Muslim. See, we don't want to be Muslim and say, okay, we're Muslim by name. My name's Muhammad. But I don't pray. Not you. I'm just saying. My name's Muhammad, for example. But, and non-Muslims pay attention. I know Muslims, they pray all the time. I don't never see this, bro. You sure you Muslim? We Muslim. You pray 5 times a day. Right? It has to be important to you. It can't be something you do when you feel like it. Dad, I got some free time. Dad, what's Salat, son? Nah, you have to make time. Anything that's important to us, we do what? You make time for, if it's important to you. If it's not important to you, you're not going to make time. If it's not something that you could think about and say, you know what, this is something I need to do, you're not going to make time for it. But if it's something that's important, you're going to make time for it. And the salat is from them things that if it's important to us, we're going to make time for it. Rather, we have to make time for it. So this chapter that we're covering, the book of Salat, is very important. So much so. Before we got to the book of Salat, what was the first book we covered? The book of purification. What's the benefit of covering the book of purification? What is it leading up to? It's leading up to the prayer. The whole book of purification leads us up to this book here that we're studying now, is the book of Salat. The book of Salat is something that we have to constantly try to perfect. There are a lot of issues that we may have in our Salat that may not be correct. We may not pray properly. There's a lot of things about the prayer that we may not know, and it's okay. There's a lot of brothers, a lot of sisters that may not know certain aspects of their prayer, and they've been Muslim for a long time, and so they may be shy or embarrassed to speak about it. It's okay. As long as you're living, you still have an opportunity to get it right. You don't want to wait until you can't pray, till you physically can't make the movements, or if Allah take your speech and you can't speak, that you didn't learn, right? So, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to cover this. Any questions before we get started? So the first thing first, what this book is, or this chapter, Bab al-Adhan wa Iqama. So how we do this is, we're going to read through the text of the Shaykh rahimahullah, and then we'll explain it as we go along to ensure that everyone understands the text. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى هما فرضا كفاية. So the first thing, the author mentions, what do we need to know about the adhan, and the iqama? What do we need to know about them? The first thing he mentions is Wahuma. Both of them are farada kifaya, meaning both of them are communal obligations. Both of them are what? Communal obligation. What does that mean? What's a communal obligation? What does that mean? Someone, so that if the rest don't do it, what does that mean? Excellent. So then, if no one in the community does it, then who's sinful? Everyone. And as long as there is a group from among the Muslims who establishes it, then a sin is removed from everyone else. This is what communal obligation means, right? So it says, "Wahuma farada kifayatan ala rijal." Now, here the author mentions the word ar-rijal. So the word rajul in Arabic is one. Rijal is plural. The author says it is a communal obligation for the men, right? What also could be understood when they mention the word the men here, what's understood from that is that this is for communal prayer or community prayer, not if a person is by themselves. This is why they say ar-rijal. This means that it should be 3 or more men to establish the idhan or the adhan and the iqamah. طيب. The next one, it says ar-rijal al-muqimin. The next word is muqimin. Muqimin means that they are not traveling. This means that the adhan or the iqamah may not be obligatory on the one who is what? Traveling, right? According to the author here. So it says, it is a communal obligation for the men who are not traveling. للصلوات الخمس المكتوبة, for the 5 obligatory prayers. Now, it says the salawat al-khams al-maktuba, the 5 obligatory prayers. That means, do we establish the adhan and the iqamah for sunnah prayers? In general, in general, right? Well, also, what this means here is, let's say, for example, when they say maktuba, this means ada'in, meaning we are praying the prayer in this particular time, not a salat that we missed. So let's say, for example, a person, you missed dhuhr and asr, you want to call the adhan in this maghrib, but you want to call the adhan for dhuhr and asr. This here means that you're making the adhan and the iqamah in the prescribed time of that particular prayer. Does that make sense? Right. The next part, it says, yuqatal ahlu baladin tarakuhuma or tarakuhuma. So here, obviously, this here is referring to living in the land of the Muslims. If a person is living in the land of the Muslims and they have towns, etc., that do not establish the adhan or the adhan and the iqamah, then they will fight them. Meaning, the government in those particular places may go fight them because they didn't establish the adhan and the iqamah in those respective places. And obviously, this is in the land of the Muslims, not here. The next issue, which is important to note, it says, تحرم أجرتهما لا رزق من بيت المال لعدم متطوع. All right, this is important. It says that it is haram, impermissible, for us to hire someone to call the adhan. To hire. So let's say, for example, you put out an application in the masjid, we're looking for a mu'adhin, we're paying X amount of dollars. This is haram. It's haram, impermissible, for us to hire someone to give them money to call the adhan. However, however, it is permissible for us to give them a stipend if we choose to. So there's a difference. What's the difference? Okay, one may not be contractual. That's a good answer. So in one case, we're not paying you for your service, meaning you're an employee with us and you're employed to call the adhan. In this case, we're giving you money from the wealth of the Muslims as a stipend to do it. The only time you pay someone if you cannot find a person who is a mutatawwar, a person that's doing it for free. Does that make sense? Shaky look confused. You got me? All right. So then, calling the adhan, we cannot pay someone a salary to do it. However, we can give them a stipend if we don't have a person to do it for free. Does it make sense? Or no? Yes? No? Okay. So then, the next one, it says, وَيَكُونُ مُؤَذِّن صَيِّتًا. So who can call the adhan? That's the next thing. Who can call the adhan? Men. Yes, men. Who else can call the adhan? What type of men can call the adhan? Men who reach puberty. So, call Musannaf. He says, يَكُونُ مُؤَذِّن سَيِّتًا أَمِينًا. That the mu'adhin has to be a person who has a strong voice. A person has a strong voice, right? It says aminan, and they're a person they're trustworthy. When they call the adhan, they are trustworthy in doing that. Aliman bil waqt, and that they have to be knowledgeable of the times of the specific prayers. Does that make sense? So then you can't have a mu'adhin call the adhan and no one knows, he doesn't know the time of the prayer, but he's calling the adhan. All right? Also, any questions about that? طيب. So it says, فَإِن تَشَاهَ فِيهِ إِثْنَانِ قُدِّمَ أَفْضَلَهُمَا فِيهِ. All right. So now let's say, for example, so we have, who calls the adhan? Muhammad calls the adhan, right? So we have Muhammad, what's your name, Sheikh? Abdul Rauf. We have Muhammad and Abdul Rauf, right? Both of them want to call the adhan. How do we determine who we're going to choose to call the adhan? It says that the muaddin has to be sayyitan, right? They have to have a strong voice. So both of them, mashallah, they both have strong voices. The next thing is aminan. Both of them, they're trustworthy, right? The next thing is aliman bil waqt, and both of them know the times for the prayers. So then what's the next step after that? How do we determine who calls the adhan between them?
Deen and intellect.
Mashallah, you're cheating. So the next thing says, إن تشاح فإن تشاح فيه اثنان قدم أفضلهما فيه. If they both are consistently equal, then you have to present the best of them in those things that we mentioned. Well, what if they're equal? And it says, if they're equal, it says, ثم أفضلهما في دينه. Then whoever has the best deen, then that person is put forward, right? Between the two of them. The next thing is, okay, let's say they're equal in that. Then the next one is fi aqlihi. Then it's intellect. Whoever's more intelligent from the two of them, whoever has the most, so no one's gonna say, well, he's more intelligent than me, right? So then the next thing after that, it says thumma man yakhtaru al-jiran. So assuming that they're both equal in all of those things, then the next thing is the neighbors pick. Why is that important? Why do the neighbors pick? Because the neighbor knows them. Now think about during this time, the adhan is called. They climb up on top of a minbar, not a minbar, but they would climb to a high place to call the adhan, right? So why would the neighbors? Why would they get to pick? Think about that.
Who got the best voice?
I sense maybe the neighbors like Muhammad, all right, but Abdul Rauf, mashallah, it's a little bit better, right? So then the neighbors would pick, right? They want, you want to wake up in the morning, they want to listen to his voice instead of yours. No offense, Aki. I'm just saying, maybe. All right. So in a case like that, then the neighbors would pick. If the neighbors can't pick, right? They says thumma qura'a. A qura'a is if you have, let's say for example, you have sticks that are broken and you put them together and you choose one, whichever one is long or short. That's how you choose. This is called a qura'a. Another way you can do that is putting names in a hat and someone picking them as well. Does that make sense? All right. طيب وهو 15 جملة يرتلها على علو. All right, so a person, when they call the adhan, obviously this is not how we do it here in the US for the most part, but in some cases they did not have microphones during that time. So they didn't have microphones. So they would climb to a high place and they would call the adhan out loud without having microphones. They didn't have microphones. This is like a relatively new invention, right? So they would climb to the highest part of a particular place and they would call the adhan, right? And it says the adhan consisted of 15 jumla. How do you call the adhan? Does anyone know? I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to ask somebody else. It's 15 sentences. What is the adhan? Yeah, say the whole thing. Shake, check him. Make sure he's right. Because you... Go ahead. It's written in there?
Yes.
Oh, mashallah. Go ahead.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salat. Hayya ala salat. No. Hold it. No.
Is he right?
Hayya ala salat. Hayya ala salat. Hayya ala salat. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
All right. Let's back up a little bit. You said hayya what?
Hayya ala salat.
Hayya?
That's not it.
I don't know. You sound like.
Yeah, I'm holding it.
You going with that? Sheikh, is he all right with that?
Nah, you cool.
That's what it is?
You cool.
What is it?
Hayya.
Hayya?
Hayya.
Okay. What is it?
What is hayya?
No, read it.
Oh, hayya ala salat.
Hayya, and what else? What's after that?
Hayya ala al-falah.
Okay, good. Hayya ala salat and hayya ala al-falah. All right. What does that mean? Hayya ala salat and hayya ala al-falah. What does that mean? What are the differences? One is come to prayer, another one is come to what? Come to success. If you say hayya ala al-falah, there's a difference. Falah and falah, they're two different meanings. And we're going to talk about that too. This is why when you call the adhan, it's very important to say the letters correctly. And we're going to cover that before we finish, inshallah. When a person calls the adhan, they must have wudu. They must be in a state of Islamic purity, right? Mustaqbil al-qibla, and that they should be facing the qibla. So whatever direction the qibla is, they should be facing it. Ja'ilan isba'ihi fi udunay, and that they will take their fingers and put them in their ears like such. Okay? Ghayr mustadir. Ghayr mustadir, it means that when they're calling the adhan, they're not spinning around in a circle. Rather, they are multafitan fil hay'alati yaminan wa shimalan. Meaning hayya ala salat, they're going to the right. Hayya ala al-falah, they're going to the left. Like this. All right. قائلا بعدها في أذان الصبح. After the adhan for, after the adhan for Salat al-Fajr, there's an addition that is said. Does anyone know what that is? Ahsant. As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. This means that the prayer is better than what? Sleep. Think about that. What do you think the wisdom of saying that the salat is better than sleep? What's the wisdom in saying that? Can anyone think about that? It might motivate a person to get up. If you're in a bed, just imagine you're in a bed, right? You hear the adhan, Allahu Akbar Allah, you're in your, just assuming In wufiqt, if you're blessed to live in a place where they call the adhan out loud outside, and you're in the bed. Imagine you're tossing and turning. You hear it like that. Let me just. And then someone says the prayer is better than sleep. Isn't that something that might like, Dad, I need to get out the bed? Possibly, right? So, as-salatu khayru min an-nawm marratain. This is said twice. This is said 2 times. Any questions on the adhan? Right. The next thing we're going to discuss now is the iqama. The iqama, وهي 11 يحضرها. It is 11 sentences, and it is said quickly. What's the iqama? Who knows? What is it? MashaAllah. 1, 2, 3. All these men, nobody knows the iqama? Yes, salam, huh? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Excellent. That's the iqama, right? So what do we need to know about the iqama? It says, يُقِيمُ مَنْ أَذَّنَ فِي مَكَانِهِ إِنْ سَهُلَ. So, essentially, whoever calls the adhan should be the one calling the iqama. It's not an obligation, just recommended. So it's possible that someone can call the adhan, but they will not call the iqama. It's possible, right? However, it is recommended that the one who calls the adhan likewise calls the iqama. Adhana fi makani in sahula. This is if it is easy for that person to do that. Now, we're going to talk about some of the things that make it, and some of the things that, problems that we may fall into. It says, وَلَا يَصِحُّ إِلَّا مُرَتِّبًا. You cannot call the adhan or iqama unless it's in order. Meaning you can't start off by saying Salatu khayru min an-nawm, hayya ala salat, Allahu akbar, Allah. Like, no, you can't do it. It has to be in a particular order, right? Mutawaliyan. Mutawaliyan means there is continuity. To the point, if you start off, you start off with the adhan, Allahu akbar, and you just stop, walk away, come back. Allah, like, no, it has to be mutawaliyan. It has to be a smooth flow. It can't be large gaps between them. Is that clear? Right. Let's see what else. Min adalin. The one who calls the adhan or the iqama should be just. It should be a just person. Right? A person that is just, right? So we just met with a few scholars that we actually studied with over the years. So the issue of a Muslim being just, right? So he said that perhaps maybe 100 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, a Muslim that was just then, or rather, if you take a Muslim today and apply them to the rules of being just, then no one will be considered just. So then the measuring stick changes based on the time period that you live in. Did that make sense? Like, for example, he said that the Muslims today, none of us will be able to live up to the standards of the Muslims in the past. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, khayru qarn qarni. The best of the people is my generation. Thumma ladina yalunahum. Then the ones that come after them, then the ones that come after them, then the ones that come after them. So this means that the fact that we're alive right now, we represent the worst generation, the one that we're in right now. So if you take the best from among us and compare them to the worst from among them, it's not going to be equal. Did that make sense? So, nasallahu salam wa afiyat. May Allah help us. So he says, walau mulhinan. Now, when we call the adhan, walau mulhinan, as they say, mulahanan. I'm sorry, mulahanan. If a person makes mulahanan, meaning they put like some melody to the adhan, as we hear, right? It's not recommended, but it's, as they say, meshi. It's acceptable, but it's not the best, right? It says, oh, malhunan. Malhunan, it means like, let's say, for example, a person calls the adhan and they make a mistake, right? Like when we say, hayya al falah, right? A falah is a farmer. If you change the meaning, so you can change, let's say, for example, a person makes a mistake and changes the i'rab. Instead of it saying Allahu Akbar, they say Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, instead of Allahu Akbar, right? It's incorrect, but it's meshi, right? If you say Allahu Akbar, this is incorrect. If you say Allahu Akbar, this is a question. Is Allah the greatest? Right? So this is why it's very important that you're looking like, huh?
Because I hear that.
You hear what?
Where they extend the beginning.
They say Allahu Akbar. It's a khata. This is now this type. If you make it the adhan like this, is incorrect. This adhan is unacceptable.
Not here. No, not here. I'm just saying like.
The thing is, we have to be important. It is very important that we understand when we call the adhan, we know what we're saying for the most part. Unfortunately, we live in a time where people that don't know think they know. Right? People that don't know think they know. So sometimes we find people, because you've been Muslim for a long time, you put yourself in position and maybe you don't know. The problem is we have in Islam, we have the word jahil, right? What does jahil mean? Ignorance, right? But the word ignorance is a harsh term, right? And so when we say a person's ignorant, that's like bad manners to call someone you're ignorant. You don't say that to people, right? But in meaning a person that don't know, right? So there are levels. In Islam, we have something called jahil murakkab and jahil basit, right? Jahil basit, it means a person don't know, but it's a simple form of them not knowing. That means you're not going to, for example, this brother, he doesn't know the adhan. He doesn't know the adhan, and he knows that he doesn't know the adhan, so he's not going to come to the masjid and just call the adhan. He's not going to put himself in that position. Why not? Why wouldn't he do that? Because he know that he doesn't know, right? We have brothers. I've seen brothers. There are other brothers around. They know that brothers know how to recite Quran, but then they'll jump up and lead the Salat and make mistakes. The second type of jahil is called jahil murakkab, right? This means that the person doesn't know and they don't know that they don't know. This is the worst kind. Why is it? What makes this the worst kind? You can't, it's hard to correct them. If a person doesn't know, you know that they don't know, but they don't know that they don't know. In fact, to them, they do know. This is a big, big problem. It's a problem with people that teach Islam. It's a problem with people that think they practice certain aspects of the religion. It's a big problem. And this is why our religion of Islam, it calls for a person to have some type of humility. Humility, in a sense, in a lot of ways, but especially when it comes to knowledge of the religion. You may think, I'll give you an example. Before a person studies Islam, let's say, for example, any brother here or sister here, you may have gone to whatever masjid, studied books, and think that you know. And you go to another country and you begin to study Islam. When you first get there, you're going to think that you have reached a certain level. And then you're going to go through an Arabic program, and then you're going to think like, yeah, I'm really somewhere, right? The problem with that is when that happens, you start to think that you've reached a certain status. And then the more you learn, you realize the less you really know. You don't know what you think you know. And then the more you learn, the more you begin to decline, like, dang, I'm really nobody. Like, I'm really, dang, why did I say that before? I played myself. This is what happens as you really start to study. You really see your level. And I'll give you an example. We just got back from Umrah, right? One of the brothers from the community was with us. So he's like, man, while y'all here, y'all might as well do a class. And me and Saeed looked at him like, do a class? You tripping. Here is where we go to get classes. And so we had the opportunity to sit in one of the lectures of one of Sheikh Abdul-Razak Al-Badr. And when he saw the class and hundreds of students there, I said, see, this right here, this is our reality. In America, everybody's fooled. We're one of these people, and we're not even on the level of a lot of these people. Those are just the facts. But you have to understand, you have to know your level. You can't allow somebody to make you think that you're something that you're not. And this goes back to compound ignorance, if you will, or a person thinks they know, but they don't know. And they don't know that they don't know. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? All right. So the next part. So when we mention that, it's important because if a person calls the adhan and they don't know what they're saying, it's like, just fall back. Like, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. If you don't know, go learn it. Learn it the proper way, right? The next one, وَيُجْزِئُ مِن مُمَيِّزٍ. So if we have a kid, a boy, he's 7 years old, 8 years old, he can call the adhan. Right? Yujzi, right? يُبْطِلُهُمَا فَصْلٌ كَثِيرٌ. The adhan is null and void if there's a long break between them. We just mentioned that previously, right? وَيَسِرٌ مُحَرَّمٌ. Or there's a gap and you do something that's impermissible. So, for example, if they're calling the adhan, let's say you're calling the adhan, Allahu Akbar, and then somebody walks past you and pushes you, and you're like, this mother, you say something crazy out of your mouth, right? This will invalidate, I only said it because it's real life, right? This will invalidate that person's adhan. You have to do it again. Right? You can't have a pause or a gap like that. You can't say, you call the adhan, somebody step on your foot. You're like, man, this dude get on my nerves. And then go back to calling the adhan. You can't do that. Right? That doesn't work. It says, لا يجزئ قبل الوقت إلا فجر بعد نصف الليل. The adhan doesn't work, or it doesn't account for anything except for if it's after the middle of the night before Salat al-Fajr. And this is something we'll talk about later when we start talking about the Sunnah of Fajr prayer and the different prayers, right? It says, وَيُسَنُّ جُلُوسُهُ بَعْدَ أَذَانَ الْمَغْرِبِ يَسِيرًا. All right, so after you call the adhan for Maghrib, the Sunnah is to sit briefly, pray Sunnahs between the adhan and the iqamah. If you can, pray a Sunnah prayer between the adhan and the iqamah for Salatul Maghrib. It says, وَمَنْ جَمَعَ أَوْ قَضَى فَوَائِدْ أَذَّنَ لِلْأُولَى ثُمَّ أَقَامَ لِكُلِّ فَرِيضَةٍ. All right, let's say, for example, a person is traveling. He's a traveler. For example, how long are you going to be in town? 4 days. Huh? What's 3 days? You going to be here for 3 days? You traveling too? I'm confused. He said he's going to be here for 4 days, right? What are you talking about?
You said what's traveling, right?
No. I said, who's traveling?
Oh.
But now that you said that, what's traveling?
Huh?
What's traveling?
What's traveling?
Uh-huh.
Traveling.
It's 3 days? Does anyone agree with that?
Depending on the distance.
What's traveling? Does anyone know?
I thought it was 3 days.
Is it 3 days?
Yes, 3 days.
3 days. Anyone agree with that? What's the conditions?
But would the conditions override the principle?
Would the conditions override the what does that even mean out here? Would the conditions override the principles? That was not. What does that mean? Explain that to me.
You have your rule, like the ruler, and then you would have things that can go with or counteract, right? Or am I tripping?
I'm not gonna say you're tripping. I just don't understand what you're saying.
So I used the wrong word. So like, not the deceptions. No.
No, what did you say?
So you got the rule, and then you would have things that can counteract.
You have the rule. You have things that go against the rule.
Yeah.
What are the rules? What are we talking about?
You said what's traveling, and I said 3 days.
Okay. So when we travel, we first thing we gotta understand the distance, right? Right.
Right.
All right. So let's assume the distance is whatever it is. The amount of days a person can be considered a traveler. That's what you're talking about, right? He says 3 days. There's a difference of opinion. All right. Some says 3 days and 3 nights. When we get to that, when we get to the traveler and all that, we're going to talk about that in detail. I almost stabbed myself with a pencil. We're going to talk about that in detail. We're going to talk about what is considered traveling and why. Okay. There's a big difference of opinion as it relates to distance, or I'm sorry, as it relates to distance and the time. Like, for example, is it 3 days or is it as long as you're considered a traveler? All right, but we'll get to that inshallah. So it says if a person is traveling or if a person misses salats, let's say you slept all day, you slept all day and you missed Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib. So now you have to make up how many salats? 3, right? And now it's time for Salatul Isha. This is a good one because we're going to get in all of this, right? So Salatul Isha just came in. You wake up. You miss Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib. And right now is what time is it? Salatul Isha. What do you pray first? You pray Isha first? Right. So Isha is wajib muwassa. This means that right now is the time for Salatul Isha, but you have time to pray it. So then what's the first salat you make then? He says Dhuhr. So if you're going to take that position to pray Dhuhr, then Asr, then Maghrib, then Isha. But we're going to, just for argument's sake, we're going to do it that way. He's going to call the adhan and he's going to make an iqamah for each salat. That's if he's with a group. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? Okay. So he's going to call the adhan. He's a group of brothers. He's going to call the adhan. He's going to make the iqamah for each salat. All right. Now, let's say a person woke up and let's say Salatul Isha was getting ready to go out. And if he were to pray Dhuhr first, he would miss Salatul Isha. Which salat did he pray for? Which salat should he pray? Isha. Understand? Makes sense? All right, we're going to get into that, inshallah, when we get to that particular, yes.
You said, so if you do sleep, you do oversleep, you'll pray, you'll comment before each salat.
Yes. So the author says, Man jama aw qada fawaid adhana lil-ula. They're going to make the adhan for the first one. Thumma aqama li kulli farida. Then they're going to make the iqama for every obligatory prayer that they missed. Okay? Right. It says, وَيُسَنُّ لِسَامِعِهِ مُتَابَعَتُهُ سِرًّا وَحَوْقَلَتُهُ فِي الْحَيْعَلَةِ. All right. So this means that when the mu'adhin calls the adhan, he says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You, as a listener, should what? Repeat. Sirran. You can do it to yourself. Right? To yourself, right? Then it says, when they say, Hayya ala salah, what do you say? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right? طيب. And it says, وَقَوْلُهُ بَعْدَ فَرَاغِهِ. And when a person finishes the adhan, does anyone know the dua? There's a dua that you make. So, Once the mu'adhin calls the adhan, you follow along. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You say it to yourself. La ilaha ashhadu an la ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Hayya ala salat, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And then you follow along to yourself to the end. Once he finishes the adhan, we make the dua, Allahumma rabba hadhihi ad-da'wa. Oh Allah, the Lord of this call, ad-da'wata tamma, the Lord of this complete call, was Salat al-Qa'ima, and the Lord of the Salat that has been established. Ati Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila. Grant the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam a lofty station, right? وَبَعَثَهُ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا, and bless him with a blessed standing, الَّذِي وَعَدْتَهُ, that which you have promised him. In detail, you can look through this book here, Fortress of a Muslim, right? This is a good book here. This is a book that every Muslim is in need of. In this book, you will find Athqar al-Sabah wal-Masa. And understand something. This book here is a weapon for the Muslim. A weapon in that we live in a society that's very difficult. Sometimes we come across things that make it difficult for us to obey Allah. We're human. You make mistakes. You do things you shouldn't do. What are certain du'as that a person can make to try to get themselves back on track? What are things that we say after the event? This book here has tons of adiyah, tons of different du'as in there that are extremely beneficial to the life of a Muslim. Every single Muslim should have this. Every single Muslim should have Husnul Muslim or Fortress of a Muslim or anything that's going to help you make dua throughout the course of the day. Everyone. If you don't have it, you need to get one. Maybe you could download it online, and you'll be amazed that looking at some of the chapters, for example, just to give you an idea, some of the chapters, supplication when you wake up, supplication when getting dressed, supplication when putting on new clothes, for someone who has the new clothes, what to say when you're undressing, what to say when you go to the bathroom, when you relieve yourself, going to the masjid, etc. There's so many things in here. Invocation for settling a debt. You have a debt with somebody. Is there a dua for that? Yeah, Islam has a dua for that too. All right. How to seek Allah's protection for your children. There's a dua for that too. Visiting the graves. There's so many different duas that a person can make throughout the course of a day. It's like all of these things serve as a weapon for us as we live in this dunya until Allah calls us back. So everyone should have this, inshallah, as a protection. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a weapon, protection. Protection. I like that better. It's a protection. It's a better word. Anyway, this book serves as a protection. Alhamdulillah. At any event, we're going to finish with that. Our next class, I don't know if we're starting. There's a class that we're supposed to be starting on Thursdays called I Want to Be a Muslim. I don't know if we're going to start this week or next week. I got to check with the scheduler. But we'll figure it out. And then the next time we have this class, inshallah, we'll be going through the shurut of Salat, the conditions of Salat. Any questions? No questions? None? Fine. No one has any questions? So everyone knows everything you need to know about the event.
What's the ruling on before the Iqamah? You supposed to be sitting? You're not making sunnahs?
Before the Iqamah?
No.
What do you mean?
It says instead of standing for the Iqamah is called, or you supposed to sit?
I'm confused. Are you saying that?
No, the thing get called.
So a person calls the adhan.
No. People either making sunnahs or they stand there while waiting for the Iqamah. It's better to sit for the Iqamah until the Iqamah is called to join the Salat.
So are you saying if a person comes into the masjid, should they pray their tahiyyat to the masjid before, like the
Not the masjid, yeah. In general, So say you make it soon as a couple minutes to the.
So say after a person calls the adhan, are you saying do you get up and stand and wait for the iqamah to come?
No, I'm saying you sit before the iqamah rather than stand. Is there a ruler on there? That's the question.
Do you sit before the iqamah as opposed to standing? Why would a person be standing?
He's standing talking to somebody.
Oh, you're saying like what is the proper etiquette?
No.
Allahu Alam. I don't know. Allahu Alam. Maybe when we get to more details into the salat, maybe we'll come back and hit that again. But as of now, off the top of my head, I can't think of. Yes.
When is the last time to pray Isha?
That's a good question. What is the last time to pray Isha? The ulama differ. Some of them, and we're going to cover that when we get to the salat in more detail. Some of the ulama say that the last time for Salat al-Isha is right before Salat al-Fajr. Some of the ulama say la, it goes all the way up until the last third of the night. Some of them say la, they say it's actually before that. I don't have a me personally, I can't say is this or that. I will say when we get to that, we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail. But in general, some ulama say it's all the way up until Fajr. Some say no, it's to the last third, before the last third of the night. And Allah knows best. We'll talk about that inshallah. But it is the longest between that and probably Dhuhr, between Fajr and Dhuhr, those the longest gaps. Go ahead.
So if a person, like you said, they overslept, they missed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and it's time for Isha, and they're at the masjid, and the imam is about to start praying Isha, but technically he
missed.
So
all right, so that's a good question. So the brother said, what if the person missed all those salawat, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib? So my question is, was he asleep in the masjid?
No, I'm saying maybe.
I just wanted to throw that back at you because you try to trick me up. Was he asleep in the masjid?
He was
Sleep in his house? So you're saying he woke up, missed all those salats, and then went to the masjid? First of all, he's wrong. If he missed Dhuhr, so this is an easy way for me to get out of answering the question, but I'm going to answer it. No. Listen, the first thing is he knew. So you're saying he got up, realized he missed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and he looks and it's time for Isha. He knows it's time for Isha. So instead of praying those salats, he gets dressed, makes wudu, get dressed, leave the house, walk down the street, however long he's going to go, and prays in the masjid. First of all, that's a mistake. It's a mistake because Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, إِذَا نَامَ عَنْهَا فَصَلِّيهَا لَمَا ذَكَرَهَا. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that if a person oversleeps with the salat, you salli lamma dhakaraha. You pray the salat as soon as you realize you missed it. So as soon as he woke up, he will have realized that he missed several salats, right? So then it's for him at that point in time to make wudu and to pray right then and there. That's number one. But to answer your question, let's say he just wound up in the masjid. He missed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and they're praying Isha, and he gets in there and they're praying Isha. What do you do? All right. Some ulama will say he can pray Salatul Isha with them. And then once he finishes praying Isha, then he go mix up the rest of the Salat. Okay? Fine. Any other questions? That's it? That was a good question now. You got any more? Anyone else? Fine. You sure? Go ahead, Sheikh.
The Jahil Murakkab.
The Jahil Murakkab. The compound ignorant. That's a harsh word. I want to get, we should get away from like calling people ignorant. That's like a harsh word. All right. We'll just say, what's a better way of saying it? The one that just doesn't know and doesn't think that they don't know.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, there was a person in a teaching position,
right?
right? And the people following him, right? Following him in things that may not be correct. Are they still held accountable?
A person muta'abbid bima ya'lam. A person worships Allah based on what they know. They're going to be judged based on what they know, right? Um, we live in a society where there are quite a few people that teach Islam that may not know what they talk about. It's not just here; it's everywhere. Right? It's just what it is. People use information they don't really know what they're talking about, but they may have a following. And to be honest with you, you gotta make dua for those people. Can you imagine? Can you imagine having a following and you don't know what you're talking about? And now it's like, dang, all these people listen to me and you're making mistakes and you know what you're teaching is not right. But it's like if I come back and tell everybody I'm wrong, I'm gonna lose my standing with the people. You laugh. That's real. Yeah, that's real. What do? I feel sorry for that person. That's a bad situation to be in. And it takes a certain level of honesty with themselves. Because at the end of the day, there are people that teach and know they don't know what they're talking about. They know that. And so in order to keep their standing, they're going to stand on that. And some people stand on that until they die. Nasallahu salam wa afiyah. In a case like that, you just gotta make dua, man. It's a rough situation. It's a rough situation. It's easier to say, listen, I only know this much. I can't go over there. I only know this. That's it. This is where my knowledge stops. You don't lose no points for that. But it takes a certain type of person to be able to do that. May Allah make us all from those people. I mean, like, are we done? All right. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.